What's up everyone, welcome back to the Griffin Family Farm. Today I'm going to show you guys a little bit about my chicken composting system. This is my favorite things that I get to do, strangely enough, as a farmer, is make compost. And as a gardener, I also love chickens. And so today we get to just talk through some of the specific ways that I'm doing that and generating a lot of compost, even with just a few hens. We're going to be getting a bunch more here in a couple weeks, but this is kind of a system that I think has been talked about a lot. At the same time, it's hard to appreciate how effective it is and how meaningful it is to be able to generate so much compost from chickens. And so I'm going to show you guys just what it looks like here. I got to flip some compost some weeds, which we'll get to a little bit later. For now, I just wanted to show you guys kind of what this looks like inside of the pen. So this is the pen, and it's just probably, I think it's like 12 feet by 20 feet. So it's pretty decent sized. The coop is a bit smaller, but still good size. I think it's about 12 by 6 feet. I've got the inside, very simple, kind of rudimentary at this point. It works for now. This outside space is really nice because there's obviously a ton of space, but then also there's below the coop. I've raised it up. This is kind of something that chickens really appreciate, is when you give them room underneath the coop. My chickens that we have right now are the friendliest chickens we've ever had. They remind me of dogs because they just come up right up to the fence. They are just hanging out right next to me. Anytime they hear me, they're running up. And I mean, it's like, I wonder, are they out of food? Because I don't expect chickens to be that aggressive. Here's the main function of this chicken pen, is that it really becomes the dumping ground for everything in the yard that could be considered, I mean, a carbon material, yes, but also, I guess, nitrogens as well. I've just put some weeds in here recently that the chickens love pecking at as if on cue. Here we go. If you're not familiar with the Korean natural farming way of raising chickens, it really helps them, it kind of develops their psychology toward greens, actually. They're predisposed to really seek after greens anytime they see them. That's a topic for a different video. But the pen serves as a catch-all for everything in the garden. They've actually got this massive pile of wood chips just waiting to be processed to come in here. And so we've kind of got an unlimited source of chicken bedding, really. And we've got leaves and charcoal and even pine needles can go in here and all sorts of stuff. And then the idea is that after a certain amount of time, the materials are shredded up enough and have been pooped on and soaked up the nitrogen from the chicken poop that it's ready to be composted. There's a slight tweak that I make to it where I don't think that I ever really leave it to get to that point where it's ready, where it's like stinking and has to be pulled. Instead, the main function really that these chickens are serving is just shredding up materials. And so we'll take a look. So you can see there's some chunks of charcoal. I actually just throw in charcoal chunks, pretty big chunks in here, and I don't really think it's that big of a deal because then there's also these smaller bits. Other than that, we've got straw, leaves. And I mean, if I just dig down a little bit, like this just almost looks like soil at this point, but it's actually about 6 inches at this point. So here's some straw, but then there's like all this kind of humus forming stuff. That's like, it like almost looks like compost already, which is really nice. That is what I'm going to take. It's still fairly high in carbon, but I'm going to take that and mix it with some nitrogen rich materials, which we'll show in a sec. Another thing while we're here is I had some kind of leftover oats. These are whole oats. I use these to make IMO, but I actually have kind of been trying to shift toward using crushed oats because these ones sprout. You can toss seeds and grains and stuff straight in the chicken coop and then actually just cover it a bit, like wet it down. They'll sprout, and they actually are a great just feed that the chickens can peck at and utilize. What I like to do every once in a while is come in here and flip the bedding a bit, and you'll see that the second that I turn over some of this stuff, the chickens are going to rush to see what's going on underneath. So they love new piles, and they'll just spread it out. None of the bedding here is stuff that I like raked out or made even. They rake out everything, and what this does helps everything to get kind of re-exposed to oxygen. It's winter, on the tail end of winter right now when we're making this video, so it's like fairly damp, a bit rainy today. In the summer, we'll come in here and just wet it down every once in a while to keep things decomposing. This is maybe like, it's probably 8 to 10 inches at the deepest. A good thing to water in your chicken bedding is JMS, Jadon Microbial Solution. I pre-inoculated this bedding right from the beginning with IMO 5, which was like a little bit of rabbit manure mixed with my IMO 4. Other things that you can put into this chicken bedding are lactic acid bacteria, really good. Helps decompose the materials a bit more. It's just overall saturating the materials with biology, which is nice because it keeps a healthy environment for the chickens. This does not smell at all. It doesn't smell of chicken poop at all. It smells really good. It smells earthy. There's a couple things for this coop that I want to change up over time. I want to add in an outdoor watering system, especially when we have more, so that I can fill it up a little bit easier. I'll connect a rain barrel and probably run some conduit pipe or PVC along one side. I'll have an external feeder as well. So even just flipping the materials like that is going to be enough to kind of re-aerate them a bit, and the chickens get access to bugs and stuff down there. That's probably their main goal. Oh, that's another thing that we'll be integrating into this system is the black soldier fly larva. Done that in the past. Don't have them right now because it's a little cold, but great thing to have during the summer. So my main task today is to actually get these weeds composted. This is an entire 50-foot garden bed worth of weeds. This is hard to tell on camera. It's about a 3-foot pile, and it's mixed with soil, but we've got like some random weeds that aren't like super harmful, probably some dandelions and stuff. But then we've got these, and these are rhizomes, grass rhizomes. I don't know if it's Bermuda, crabgrass, or whatever you want to call it. Truly nasty stuff. So I've been spending my time picking it out of that garden bed yonder, bringing it here, and we're gonna melt some weeds in compost, hot compost. Really important, in my opinion, that you pasteurize your compost with thermophilic microbes so that the rhizomes die off, because you don't want to be going and spreading these back into your compost pile undecomposed. We're going to be really careful as we compost these and make sure that they are unrecognizable. They're going to be a good source of nitrogen. The soil is a source of carbon. So this is probably fairly equal. This is like compostable material just on its own. We will be drawing bedding out of the chicken coop. And I made this hatch system. It just makes it easier for me to take materials out of the coop. I'll bring them right here. And then I've got my bokashi. The bokashi is kind of the main nitrogen source that determines how I make my compost. I basically just stockpile my bokashi from our household food waste. And then once my buckets are ready to empty, then I'll pull out chicken bedding and mix it up with the bokashi compost and make hot compost. Here is a massive pile that I made. It's a little bit overflowing, maybe a little bit too big. I got a little overzealous and it pushed my pallet over off of the block. I probably am going to need to put in some reinforcements. I did have a pallet actually hanging up right in front of here to hold in all this material, but I need to figure out something else that's going to be a little bit more sustainable. Probably need to build a frame so I can attach my pallet to that. This material, it heated up pretty well, but not quite into the thermophilic range because it wasn't moist enough. This is just a ton of bedding mixed with rabbit manure. Actually got some sheep's wool in here that I got a while back that's kind of gotten gross, and sheep's wool is a good source of nitrogen. You can see some rabbit manure, very undecomposed stuff, and yet it doesn't look too bad because we've got chickens shredding it. So just pulling this out at about 80 degrees internal and hoping to be able to increase that to 160, 130 at minimum. So let's get this flipped out so that we can remove some chicken bedding and then mix it with our bokashi and our weeds, and we'll put that in this bin. My really simple way of doing this is just to basically try and get the top to be the bottom, and the bottom of this pile will become the top. And if we can, incorporate the outer parts of the pile on the inside, that's great too. But we're going to be flipping this a couple more times before I'm going to consider it finished. Really wanted to get up to those high temperatures just for general kind of safety, but then also just decomposes a little bit more evenly and nicely. And so I can just tell it's like very, very, very dry. So I've got my buckets of water on standby. That's another integration that would be great to kind of work in pretty soon, or eventually, whenever it happens, is getting a hose kind of plug in set up for just down here, just for the compost system. It'd be nice to do like a over the top, like almost drip. It could be like a drip tape or just like a way of getting access to water. It would be nice to be able to run something over the top, maybe a PVC pipe, and then be able to turn on the spigots for each individual bay. That's just my thought. So once I get to about a foot, I'm gonna maybe saturate this a little bit. These bays are pretty large, actually. They're probably closer to a meter, maybe a little bit more, cubic meter. I think they're actually maybe almost 4 feet deep and then around 4 feet across. Nice and big. Technically runs a small risk of going anaerobic in the middle. The 3 feet rule is pretty flexible, in my opinion. Okay, so then I've got my buckets of water ready to hydrate this. Before I add the water, I'm gonna add some natural farming inputs that I've got. And these are just like, since I've got them, it's nice to sort of incorporate them as you go with whatever inputs you're making. And so here I've got some salt water, I've got some OHN, I've got some raw homemade vinegar from crab apples. And this stuff I wasn't sure how it was actually gonna turn out. Turned out super well. Smells pretty good. Not great probably for drinking, because it was just natural yeast fermented and they were all over the ground, and I kind of rinsed them off and then cut them up, and anyway, maybe we'll have a video for that. So, and then I've got my LAB. Normally, I'm really particular about how much I measure for the given, like make sure I get my ratios perfectly. For compost, it's a little bit less important. You're not putting this directly on your soil, I guess. So it's gonna compost it, and the compost kind of equalizes everything. For this, you add 1 to 500 for vinegar and LAB. I'm just gonna eyeball it. This is about 4 gallons, maybe 4.5 gallons. And so I only need an ounce. I might add a little bit more of this vinegar, and that's gonna be per bucket. Ounce of that, add a little bit of LAB, plenty of LAB, always making LAB. I could add this entire thing of salt water, even more, but I'm gonna spread it out a little bit throughout the buckets. And then I've got my OHN, little bit, really goes a long way with OHN, so I'm just gonna add a tiny bit. Give it the old stirry stir with the pitchfork, and then I'm just gonna splash it about. Chickens are coming to check it out. And we'll just do that every time we kind of grow a foot. So I'm not gonna mix all of these up every time, all these inputs. I'm gonna try and spread them out throughout the pile. So as I'm filling up buckets of water, that compost pile is taking a lot more than I expected. A lot more water, that is. Hydrate. Quick note on my bokashi. When my bokashi is ready, after it's fermented indoors, or if it's summer, it can ferment outside, but it just needs to be warm enough. Once it's fermented for the 2-week span, I like to bring them outside and just open up the spigots. Or if I'm using the buckets, I just take the bottom bucket out and leave the buckets to drain their leachate just until I'm ready to use them, because that leachate is not like the worst thing in the world, but it just really helps neutralize when it just goes into the soil. I always find that leachate piles up in my buckets over time, and I try and catch it, but I really don't want that to be messing up the fermentation that's happening inside of here. Crack these open and they look beautiful. Smell good. Nice white mold on the top. Little blue-green as well, but that is okay. I think I'm just gonna build my compost pile in this sort of half bay. I've got a nailer ready to attach another pallet. I just haven't yet. But the idea is that this thing, and I'm not gonna open up fully because the chickens are in there. This thing pops open, and then I will shovel the materials out, and then I'll mix them into this bag. This is gonna be my nitrogens, again, with the soil, which is a carbon. And then I'm gonna add my bokashi as sort of the nitrogen component. There's a little bit of chicken manure that's gonna come out with the bedding, but it's mostly a carbon material. After my years and vast experience of making compost, I think that is gonna do the trick. I think we're gonna make some great compost. And these annoying rhizomes are going to dissolve. Locked the chickens in the coop. This is gonna niftily hold right up. Grab my pitchfork. Again, not to gush about my hens, but I literally just walk over to their chicken door, and it seems like they know that I want them to get into their coop so they don't escape through here. This is some nice looking bedding. Oh my goodness. A few sticks here and there in your compost are actually totally all right. Help aerate it or keep it aerated. But yeah, I think this hatch actually works pretty well. I like this chicken composting setup because this just acts as a home base for my carbon materials. They get mixed up for me, pre-shredded. I don't have to run them over with a lawnmower or chop them up with a leaf mulcher. And it mixes up my biochar in there, just like perfectly mixes the materials, which is so nice. Okay, that looks like roughly equal parts, equal amounts to the weed pile. And then I've got 2 buckets of bokashi. I've got more on standby if I need it, but I think we'll stick with that. All right, chickens, you guys can come out now. Get out! Okay, wow. You guys are faster than I expected. I'm not gonna do my typical layering in the same way the way that I normally do it, because I'm in sort of a tight space, but I want everything to get exposed. So I'm gonna bring these weeds down. Nice thing about these weeds is that they actually contain a good amount of moisture already, and everything's been getting rained on, I guess. We'll do a little swappy. There's that. I don't have gloves on right now, so I'm just gonna fish that out. Come back for it later. Where's my son says later? All right, what did we eat the past few months? It's like some avocados. Always got the bone broth remnants in there. Rendered some beef tallow, potato peels, eggshells, apples, onion peels, bananas, a lot of stuff actually. Okay, so that's all laid out. The chickens are fascinated. You guys cannot have the bokashi. It'll make you, well, I don't know if it would make them sick actually, but probably best practice to not. And then I'm just gonna go through and try and do my best to sort of flip this all around. Really just trying to mix it up. There's also some moldy garlic down there. Okay, there's that first bit. I'm gonna saturate this. Here it is. This is the first pile with the weeds and all. We'll come back to this. Probably need to cover this guy up just to keep all of the weeds occultated away from the sun, so they stop regrowing. And then eventually I'll flip it into this pile. I just split these piles in the end and watered them both with the K&F water mixture that I made. And then here's my finished compost that I'm just kind of drawing off of and sifting slowly over time for our potting mix. I've also got a big old pile over there that I'm kind of slowly hacking away at and applying to these garden beds. But for this stuff, I'm gonna process the rest of it so that I can move these guys down the line. And you know, we're gonna check the temperature just to see what happened. It was at 80, but now that I've gotten it nice and aerated and moist, we'll check back in a few days. All right, here we are a few days later. Just got this pile of weeds transferred right here. And then I flipped that pile here. And as I was flipping it, that was the one that I kind of didn't mix up all the way. And I noticed that there was some big clumps of rabbit poop. And so really just spent some time breaking that up, breaking those clumps up. And I think that it's gonna heat up a bit better. It was only getting up to about 80. And then this pile, which was in that bay, heated up a little bit past 100. And I think just needed a little bit more aeration. I'm gonna cover these up, let them do their thing. Took me about an hour to get these 3 flipped. Feel pretty good about. And well on our way to making some really nice compost to be able to top dress all of our beds with. Guys, that's gonna wrap things up for this video. Thanks for watching. If you feel like you aren't using your compost to its fullest potential, then you wanna watch this video next. Otherwise, thanks for watching and we'll see you in the next one.